Hello. Yeah, my name is Wollabebes, just like I said earlier. And for this presentation, I'm gonna tell you guys more about game arts in 3D game arts to be exact. So on the next slide is my some of my works that I did in the past few maybe months or years, I don't remember. But basically, I did VFX, I did films and animations. One of them is like auxiliary music videos. I also did abstract arts for like Spotify banners or like my ArtStation banner as well. All those kind of like making, making graphics from scratch instead of like taking it from Google or whatever that is. So I'm pretty much familiar with 3D graphics for quite a while. I started from 2014. Wait, no, it's actually longer than that. I think 2012 at the time. So yeah, but today will be more about games. So let's talk about that. Next slide. Okay, so for my game dev journey, I started since 28. I was like 6, 7 years old at the time, and the first game that I did, it's not really a software game, but actually board games. I did paper games as well, like imagine like a book, and then you put like a bunch of things to it, and then whenever you choose something, it flips to the page and see what you got there. Like it's a very old traditional game that I did. And the reason why I did that, because at the time my brother had like a PS1, and it was pretty cool. We have a lot of cool games inside, but the problem is I really want to play them, but I have to go to school. So my idea was like maybe I should port them into like an actual board game and I could play that with my friends. So I did that like pretty much a lot of times when I was in primary school. The most successful games that I did was the Agent Bot series. It's just a paper robot fighting game, and I cut out Angry Birds. It's basically like you can shoot them like with a slingshot or whatever. So fast forward to 2010, I did PowerPoint games. It's not too much. I actually just found out that my teacher used it for making quizzes and puzzle, and they always use that whenever we have like a meeting at school, and it's pretty cool. And I really want to learn that, so we open up PowerPoint at the school library, learn how to do that. It's quite pretty simple, but you kind of like get things a bit going. Um, yeah, like it's pretty cool. After that, I was like really wanted to game. I think I was really wanted to make 2D games at a time. I look at like Pokemon and stuff. It's like pretty cool stuff. We have like a GBA emulator. We don't really have Game Boy. So it's pretty cool and I really want to try that. So we look at like, oh, Game Maker. And then it was pretty cool, but it was limited as well because during that time, I have a desktop and I don't have a Wi-Fi or I don't have internet access at all. So it's like it's really hard to learn that. And every time I try to learn, it's just kind of like hit me like bunch of roadblocks and just kind of like discouraging at times. But then after that, into 2015, I started to find another one, which is a pretty cool engine I found called FPS Creator X10. It's a 3D FPS shooter game where you can like put some blocks to it and you become like a first person shooter and a bunch of enemies and stuff. The cool thing about it, it was like the first engine, 3D engine that I use, and it was actually for Vista, but Vista died, so no one really know about this. But it was very limited, but still inspiring for me. That like because of it, I can feel like oh, anyone can do pretty cool games from the get go if you know what you're doing and if you have the software for that. And then after the FPS Character X10 doesn't exist anymore or completely discontinued, I was like looking for another one and I found Unity. And then after that, it's literally Unity like till the present day. I didn't switch to Unreal yet because I'm still bad at C++, but Unity is pretty much like good enough for pretty much all the cool games you can think of. Like it's all possible in Unity. Like again, it doesn't matter what engine, as long as you know what you're doing. And that's how I came. Next slide. So yeah, I'm currently working on a horror game called Vague. I don't know the name for it yet. I'm still thinking about it, but the reason why it's vague because it's a vague idea that I kind of like it because I don't know what the game will look like and I don't know what the story will look like. It's all vague, but there's something to it. It's like digging a gold in like this very weird caves. So next slide. Okay, so what it is actually, it's a psychology horror game about the feeling of losing the sense of self while you're trapped in a personalized nightmare. Like think of it when you're stuck in your sleep, you try to wake up, but you can't, and everything gone worse in your head. Like you just can't escape it. What inspires me is actually based on a real thing. I have a lucid dream where I can't wake up, and I was like kind of thinking of the worst case scenario, and because it's a lucid dream, it kind of like happened to it. So it's like it's funny, but it's scary at the same time, and it's like kind of like get me into like, oh, what if I make this an actual game? That would be interesting. And yeah, and some musics that I listen to from like Bastille, The Driver, and The Draw. Those two singles are pretty cool. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the pre-alpha footage that I did. It's a demo inspired from Silent Hill PT. And keep in mind that the Silent Hill PT inspired demo are not really based on the game that I'm planning to make. Mine is more traditional horror game where you can like interact and do some like an actual horror game, but with the mind twisting puzzles. Like you're stuck in this weird alternate um, place, but it was actually morphed by your mind. Like your character's mind. It's not really yours, but you kind of like relate to them. But as you go, you kind of understand what the player, I mean, who you play as, who his backstory is through his memory, and then as you go, you know who it is, but you might feel a bit disconnect in the end. So it's a really cool, interesting concept that I really want to make. You can see the graphics like this. This is very early on. Like you can see the lighting a bit leaking there. So I try my best to get the good graphics that I could possibly push. Because graphic is passion. I've been dreaming making this for quite a while, and yeah, it's really. I hope that I can make it. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Next slide. Yeah, it's just a looping hallway. Yeah, so let's talk about the game art now. So we know that in vague realism, and not really realism, but stylized realism are like one of the core thing that I want. Yeah, it sounds like a vacuum, exactly. But it's not. It's like think of it. It's a part of a memory, but you don't know what it is until you go into it multiple times. So yeah. Okay. Back to the thing. Let's talk about game art. So next slide. Okay, so game art. It's a for me, what game art is when you try to mix maths or programming and art in a creative blender. So as a guy that likes technical stuff, but also art, this is kind of like the thing that I'm passionate about. Like you can use your own knowledge about programming and stuff and try to blend that into your art. For example, you can do shadings and all those stuff and making pretty cool stuff, not just for you, but you can also do it for anyone else, like making tools for them or all those things that you can think of about artists. For like, for example, making Photoshop link to your game engine. That's where technical artists came in and they make those tools for you so that you can work creatively on your game engine and doesn't feel disconnect when the programming comes. Next slide. Okay, so what I found out about making good graphics in Unity, because that's the engine I'm using. The thing is, we use PBR texture workflow, means physically based rendering. It's like a multiple textures that represent what data the object should look like. For example, the specular, how shiny it is, how smooth it is. The diffuse, what's the color? And also the normal map. So how bumpy it is. Is it smooth? Is it soft? Is it like rough, like a rock or whatever? And it's all mapped by just a single texture that applied to a mesh. And when the light comes in, it kind of like realistically look good. And then the second thing is use all the lighting feature you can get from your engine, like light probes, reflection probes, global illumination. If you use the Unreal, you can use Lumen or Nanite. Anything that makes your game look good, but you have to think about performance as well. And keep in mind that don't use too much light, because if you put too much, then it feels a bit too exposed or a bit less dramatic because it feels a bit like overblown, basically. Next slide. Yeah, so yeah, game art in a short form is just problem solving. For example, like in video games, if you notice, when you make games before and all this stuff, you might found like, oh, why my game slow, or why is it taking so much resources? And there's a lot of reason for that. But for my case, since I'm making high realistic graphic, I need the VRAM usage, means I need the GPU to be more faster. So that means I need to reduce the amount of texture to be into the GPU. And the cool thing about it, since I'm a technical artist, I can actually change my texture into just one single color map. So that would be the metallic will be an R color, which is the red color. The collision will be the G color, which is green. And maybe if I want to put details like a masking, I could just put it as a blue. So think of that like color channel from RGBA into one single texture. And then instead of 4 of them, you can just merge it to one. So you can like give like 100 MB texture, but contains the data that you need instead of 4, which is like 500 MB for some reason. So that's one of them. Or you can fake simulations, because if we have like leaves or feathers or whatever, and we want to like make it floppy, but instead of us simulating, because that usually take a lot of performance, you can just fake them using shaders. For example, we can put noise texture, display some of the vertex, and from there you can make like waves or wind. And yeah, and all the things that you learn from this, it could be anything that you learn about. You can actually try that into and put it into somewhere that you think might work. For example, you can try do some calculation into your GPU instead, because that's faster compared to CPU. So yeah, that's what I like about, like, you try to solve one thing, maybe that solution will be for another thing as well. You just need to figure things out in the end. Yeah, I think that's about it. Next slide. So yeah, if you guys interested in this more, you can check more on the Unity documentations. Oh yeah, for that quick tip, if you want a good graphics, you can actually cheat your way to trick your player's eyes. One of them is if you have like static lighting, like doesn't actually move around, you can just bake them, basically like sticking the lights into the wall of the mesh. So it feels like it's light up, it's actually just textures. And it's actually reduce the amount of calculation for your light, so you can kind of like liberate some of your FPS a little bit. And then you can use occlusion culling so that you can unload some of the meshes, so that whenever the player look at that part, the thing that behind him will be deloaded. Basically, it's think of it like Cyberpunk, when you go in, it's like this like gone, but better. Basically, when you look at it, all the things that you don't need, you just hide it so that it doesn't bloat your GPU. And yeah, about lights, you can actually put extra lights to them. Like for example, I added a light on the window instead of using an HDRI, because it makes it more better. Even though it's not really realistic, but it actually applies on like filmmaking as well. You might see like there's soft boxes on around the characters, or if you look at the Resident Evil breakdown, you might see there's some light on the character's face, even though it's not there. It's so that it looks better instead of realistically accurate, because realism can be a bit down or a bit so try to like pick it out by using lights and play around with it. It's just a tool, so you can like play around with it, especially in games. Yeah, so that's the quick tip that I could give if you want to get into it. Next slide. Yeah, so if you guys interested in the game, you can register to that in early access. You can screenshot this if you have a friend who really into this game as well. The cool thing about this, the game itself is open production. Hopefully after I release it on Xbox and all, we deal with the NDA and everything, I could actually send some of the game's assets. So if you guys interested, you can check on my website, soccerentertainment.com, maybe /learn. You can look at how the character are made, how do we do that PBR and stuff. So hopefully you guys can check it out if it exists. So you can register it here. I will let you guys know about that. Okay, thanks for this.